Hello and welcome back. Let's chat about George Bridgman today, and specifically about his infamous Constructive Anatomy. Now, this book is considered to be something of a legend and a holy grail in the artistic community. Chances are, if you're interested in anatomy and human figure drawing, you have heard of this one. It is suggested in many internet threads for beginner artists. Great figure masters like Frank Frazetta have used it to improve their own anatomy skills. In fact, it is rumored that Frank Frazetta has copied the entire book in one single day, and that's how he has learned his anatomy. I wouldn't suggest that you try doing that, it would be quite intense. So it all sounds awesome so far, and as an eager beginner you rush out to buy this book, or maybe you find an old edition of the book online, because due to its age it is currently available in the public domain. Whichever way you do it, you're now a proud owner of Bridgman's Constructive Anatomy. You open the book impatiently and you're ready to dive in and consume all that wonderful knowledge. You're greeted with the following intro. The drawings that are presented here show the conceptions that have proved simplest and most effective in constructing the human figure. So far so good, right? The next paragraph though is likely gonna knock you back a little bit. What the actual... Okay, you would be forgiven for thinking that maybe it's just a little bit of an eccentric intro. So you skip forward a few pages to where the main text starts. And we're now in the first chapter titled General Anatomy, where we're greeted with this. Okay, maybe the drawings are gonna clear out some of this confusion. Nope, seems a little bit unlikely. So okay, joking aside, George Bridgman was an amazing artist and one of the most influential art teachers of his time. He taught the Art Students League, and thousands upon thousands of students passed through his lectures. Many of them went on to become famous artists themselves, Norman Rockwell and Andrew Loomis among them. So we know he must have been pretty great. Perhaps the writing just doesn't quite capture the vibe of his lectures. We also have to remember that he lived and taught in the end of 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. The first edition of Constructive Anatomy was released in 1920, so it's natural that we feel that the manner and the language in which it's written is maybe slightly out of date. Also, due to the nature of his lectures, he was giving them in a big auditorium. His sketches were mural-sized drawings that he did with a piece of charcoal taped to an end of a really long stick that he held above his head, and that's how he did all his drawings, so everyone in the auditorium could see them. This gave them beautiful immediacy and gesture, but they're hardly the most detailed or accurate drawings that you would find in an anatomy book. To make the matters even more confusing, some of his books, like this one here, were not actually written by George Bridgman himself. Rather, they were the efforts of his students who tried to preserve his legacy after George Bridgman already passed away. Now, I really hope that his students were better students than I was back at the university, because I certainly wouldn't want anyone compiling a book from the lecture notes on any subjects that I studied. But given how passionate they were and the amazing effort they did to preserve his sketches by going through them meticulously and photographing them, I think it is safe to say they were much better students than me. As far as I can gather though, Constructive Anatomy was indeed George Bridgman's own writing. It was released during his lifetime, and it went through quite a few editions since then, so today it's a pretty well organized book with all the explanations and relevant illustrations being next to each other where you would expect them to be, and yet it is still quite a daunting read. How is the beginner meant to make sense of all of that? If you go on YouTube and you search for Bridgman, you're immediately greeted with a whole host of artists trying to explain how to interpret Bridgman correctly. Marshall Vandroff has a 12-part playlist on Bridgman, with each video running roughly 1.5 hours long. I think this should give you a hint that it gave me as well. This is not a good book for a beginner. In fact, even if you know some anatomy but you don't have much experience drawing, it would be a very grueling and frustrating exercise to try and extract the value from this book. You may say, okay, who the hell is this guy and how dare he speak heresy of Bridgman? Well, I am that beginner that I'm talking about. At least that was me just over a year ago when I first opened Bridgman, tried to get into it and failed miserably. My personal opinion, you should spend some good time first getting to grips with gesture drawing, and then also some basics of constructive drawing from teachers who are a little bit more user-friendly. For my list of recommended resources, you can check out this video here. And once you've done that, do come back to Bridgman. Because despite of everything I said so far, this book is actually incredible. I came back to this book after a year of sketching and learning from other resources, and I discovered it completely anew. And now I can finally see, at least to some degree, why it gets so much reverence in the art world. When it comes to simplifying and grouping muscle structures and conveying them visually through memorable volume shapes, Bridgman is second to none. It is no coincidence that one of his books is titled The Human Machine. Indeed, he does break anatomy and human forms into something very structured, almost mechanical in nature, and yet through his incredible artistic talent, it flows and looks very organic and human. His raw drawings that for an unprepared last year me looked like a janky mess suddenly start to make so much more sense. I can't think of any other artist who uses the lines so economically and yet so perfectly. It's an exercise in minimalism and efficiency. Bridgman doesn't get lost in the details. He omits some of the finer points that other anatomy books get into, and he bundles certain smaller muscles together by the volumes that they visually create. Why? Because we're not here to study to become surgeons. We're here to study how to best convey human shape, and for that we don't need to know each single individual tiny muscle. We need to see things as volumes and shapes, and Bridgman is the king of that. So to wrap this up, do I think Bridgman is worth your time? Yes, 100%, absolutely. I recently went through the entire Constructive Anatomy and copied all the plates and tried to make sense of as much text as I possibly could at the moment. It is certainly a book that I will be returning to again and again as my own skills improve, because I feel it still has so many secrets to offer. I also have to mention this modern day interpretation of the book by Sam Blackley. This isn't a plug, Sam hasn't paid me any money to include him in this video, but by strange coincidence when I first ordered Bridgman's Constructive Anatomy on Amazon cancelled my order and said it wasn't available. So when I looked for alternatives I found this one, and I'm really glad I did. Now to be clear, I don't think this is a perfect revision. There are many things that work really great here, but there are also many things that the original does better, including even the text in some cases. But what I would recommend is actually getting both of them. Between the two of them, they actually make one coherent book that is somewhat easy to follow for an intermediate beginner like myself. So what are your thoughts on Bridgman? Do you have any experience with his teachings? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, stay awesome, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next one.